There has never been a better time to upgrade your combine tractor and grain cart tires. Save up to $300 per tire when you buy 2 or more eligible Firestone Ag radial tires this fall. Visit firestoneag.com for more details. And we're back talking markets with Dan Hueber of the Hueber Report. Dan, we discussed the impact of this most recent USDA report on corn and soy. My next question is wheat. There has not been much to write home about in the wheat market as of late. Is that changing?
Not really, not really. I mean, and again, the numbers that were out today were leaning just a little bit to the friendly side. And truly, wheat is the only market globally that you can really make a story about. I mean, its ending stocks have consistently, on a global standpoint, decreased over the last several years. Is it to a critical level? You know, certainly not. And sure, I mean, wheat is. Sometimes you'll generate excitement just because it is truly a foodstuff, but here again too, nobody's really clamoring to stock up at this point in time. So yes, we're probably due for some rallies, but again, I would not look for long, extended type periods of stronger prices.
Dan, over the past 2 years, in the wheat market specifically, there have been headline rallies. News happens over in Russia, Ukraine, wheat market spikes. We haven't had one of those since this past summer. No. Has the market adjusted to the global situation?
Well, I think that is probably indicative of the overall feeling toward commodities at this point in time. You know, we had our bubble 2 years ago, prompted partially by inflation, prompted partially by what happened in Ukraine, Russia. We've adjusted to that. You know, people have adjusted production to try to compensate for it. So, boy, unless we can find another reason weather-wise to start panicking, it's probably going to be difficult to do so. Australia's a little dry. Argentina's certainly dry. So, you know, that could trim back some production figures as we move along, but neither of them would necessarily be, you know, major market-moving factors.
Winter wheat acreage in this country, Dan, do we expect that to continue to grow as more folks explore double crop?
Oh, you know, over time possibly, but boy, I mean, we have for the most part exported our wheat production to other countries. I mean, and wheat that is one crop that seems to grow just about anywhere. So it's a little hard to justify taking away corn and bean acres for that to happen. So.
That's a really good point. Dan, while we're talking, of course, one of the things that we saw impacted by inflation at the grocery store was meat prices. Beef has been up at record levels. Cattle prices are still very strong.
Right.
How much longer into winter can that continue?
Well, you know, the cattle market is one that's it's kind of on the edge here right now. I mean, we of course saw a major rally from the spring into the summer months. Looked like it had maybe peaked, but you know, we've had a kind of a secondary move here as of late. But boy, that just seems to be running out of gas. I mean, you're getting beyond the cookout season, you know, which always tends to trim back on demand for beef. Yeah, I'm going to say right now is looking like pretty shaky territory on this cattle market, moving in higher, and may, of course, start turning in the other direction. Hogs, a little bit different story. The latest hog and pig report was certainly not bullish per se, but on the same token, you know, I think there's where the demand has shifted over the lower cuts of meats. I have seen there's a little bit of concern now of avian flu maybe popping up here and there again. So you know, and again, that could direct more people to look at the hog market. So I'm a little more friendly in the hogs than maybe the cattle or any other meats at this point in time.
That was a good point about the avian influenza. First outbreak since several months, I believe, this past week, Dan.
Exactly, yep.
We also saw this past week the CPI, Consumer Price Index, released from the U.S. government. Inflation still with us. Has the money crowd moved on? Are we no longer buying commodities to cover inflation?
And I think it's been dispersed into other areas. And of course, one of the major things there, be it the commodity market or even the equity market, is the fact that we now have interest rates that are competitive as far as a return on investment. So I think you're seeing more and more money flow over into those fixed instruments, and that just drives up money moving into the commodity sector or the equity sector.
And I would imagine if rates stay high, that flow will continue, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and right now we may not see interest rates move significantly higher, but chances of them turning lower are very slim at this point.
All right, lots to think about, Dan, as we look out to the future. That's Dan Hueber of the Hueber Report.